sitting at the round table of my top 5 favorite fantasy series of all time. You know, we get together once a month just to chop it up. Most times we just argue over what Grimdark really is. I just got done telling A Song of Ice and Fire to stop coming in here with these incomplete arguments. When, boom, War of the Rose Throne kicks in the door, waving the 4-4. And he starts scanning over my top 5. Dude settles on the kid. I'm like, man, leave Harry Potter out of this. Nostalgia, bro. He's going to stay right where he's at. And he grazes over Prince of Nothing because he freaking knows better. And he settles on First Law. I'm like, bro, you got some brass ones to come in here like that. You better keep moving. He moves over First Law and he settles on the Greenbone Saga. And you know what he says? You're sitting in my seat. And I couldn't argue with him. So out went Greenbone, and in came the War of the Rose Throne.
Check this out, y'all.
Read a book, read a book, read 'em all. Read a book, read a book, read 'em all. R-E-A-D-A-B-O, okay.
Okay, welcome to the Black and Blue Collar Reader. If you're new here, my name is Dan. Today I'm going to be reviewing the War of the Rose Throne series by Peter McLean. This is a quartet. The first book is the Priest of Bones, second, Priest of Lies, third, Priest of Gallows, fourth and final book will be the Priest of Crowns. I finished this series about a week and a half ago, and I just loved every moment of it. The blood, the guts, the gore, the dark magic, the dialogue, the character work. I thought this was an exceptional story, and I was fully engaged in this story from Bones to Crown. I've been out there on BookTube, and I kind of get this feeling that this series is criminally underrated. And I just wanted to make a video and tell you guys why, if you love dark fantasy, why this series is for you, and that you need to go out and get this series immediately. So why don't I just get right down to brass tacks and get into this review. So at its bare bones, this is a gangster's tale. This story takes place in a city called Ellenburg, right there in the late Middle Ages, right around the Industrial Revolution. This is a first-person story told through the jaded eyes of our protagonist, Thomas Piety. Now, Thomas Piety is a war veteran. He is a recently ordained military priest. He is also a gangster and the leader of a band of heathens called the Pious Men. Now, before the war, Thomas ran a small section of the city in Ellenburg called the Stink. Yeah, what a great name, right? The Stink. I mean, you ain't finding no Starbucks at the Stink, right? So when this story begins, our protagonist is coming back from a war in Avignon. He returns with his brother, his best friend, and his pious men to find that all of his illegitimate businesses have been taken from him while he was out at war. And for the most part, the first book deals with him attempting to regain these businesses back with his crew and his two swords aptly named the Weeping Women. Right from the beginning, we get to find out what type of man Thomas Piety is. And Peter McLean really provides our protagonist with a distinct voice. We really get to get inside our protagonist's head. We find out that he is cold, calculating, he is a leader of men, and he is not without compassion. Right from the beginning, we find ourselves in a bar that was once Thomas Piety's bar. And his pious men come in, they start getting drunk and partying, and two of his members attempt to take the bartender's daughter upstairs to force themselves on her. Now, Thomas Piety, like many gangsters, have a code, and rape is not a part of that code. He gets into a verbal disagreement with his men, and before you know it, these men are dead, lying on the floor, bleeding out at this bar. As the story progresses, we really get to see the business side of this organization. You know, the brothels, the gambling dens, the bars, the horses, and we get to see him go out there and make his presence known, that he is back in town and he is going to take his businesses by blood and steel if needed. One of the best parts about McClane's writing is his character work. I mean, there are secondary characters in this that I absolutely fell in love with. Now, these secondary characters really get fleshed out because of the characteristic as Thomas Piety being an ordained priest. Now, this religion is very compatible or comparable to Catholicism, where many of its members go to the priest and give confession. Now, we get confessions from some of these pious men that really start to give them layers, and you start to understand them and connect with them and empathize with these characters to the point that by the end of the story, you are full on rooting for every one of these characters. It was just exceptionally done. Not only exceptionally done, but done through a first-person perspective to give these secondary characters such life and such richness was just awesome, was just very well done in my opinion. I'm going to provide you with some of these, typical gangster character names. I mean, one of my favorite characters is Bloody Ann, Thomas Piety's best friend and his second in command in his crew. Our next character is Billy the Boy. He is a child that they found on the battlefield and just kind of adopted them into their little crew. And this character is very creepy. He has something hidden behind his eyes, and we quickly find out that this character is where the magical element of this story blossoms. Our next character we get is Thomas's brother Jakob, which is he was very unlikable. He was an alcoholic, quick to violence, quick to disagree with anybody and everybody that he came in contact with. But throughout the story, throughout the books, you really start to feel for this character, and you really start to, understand him and like him, and that was just so well done on McClane's part. We also get another couple side characters like, Simple Sam and the woman and Big Luca, Fat Luca, and it was just an amazing time, being around these characters, getting in on the dialogue, the banter, as they put each other down, and it was a very funny series in more ways than 7. But I would say that Bloody Ann was definitely one of my favorite characters in all of fantasy. She was just a beat-up war veteran with a scar across her chin, and she didn't take shit from nobody. I mean nobody, not even Thomas Piety. Sometimes she put Thomas in his place. Thomas actually sees Bloody Ann as his best friend, and he puts her as second command of his crew. His brother should have taken that role, but he would not give it to his brother just because of his personality traits that I kind of alluded to earlier. Now, the relationship that was built between all of these characters was another aspect that just drew you in and provided such emotion, and you started to really feel for these people and started to relate to them, to empathize with them, and it was just a fascinating ride throughout this whole story. Now, some of the themes dealt with in this story are, PTSD. There are LGBTQ themes that were done very well in my opinion. I mean, I'm just a heterosexual male, but, I thought these themes were handled with care and done absolutely amazing. There's also themes of family and government control. And as the story moves along, you really get to see that, the crown starts entering the picture, and you get to see that the people that run the country kind of use the same methods as Thomas Piety, who runs a gang of heathens. So it was very cool to just go through this story and see all the plots play out and the twists and the turns. It was just fantastic. Another part of this that I really wanted to touch on a little more were the themes, and the themes of PTSD. Now, many of our characters have come back from war. They saw evil and horrible and gruesome things, and many of them are not dealing with it right. I mean, we have Joachim, right, Thomas's brother, who deals with this trauma that he has experienced throughout this war, as well as trauma he's experienced as a child. He deals with it by drinking and by acting out violently toward others. Now, Thomas Piety, he doesn't share with anybody. He's a drinker, he's an alcoholic, but he packs all those emotions down inside that they never show up. Except for when they do show up and bubble up, and he will have anxiety attacks and things like that. We have other characters that are just very quiet and won't talk to people and will isolate because of the things they have experienced in this war. And I thought this theme was just dealt with exceptionally well, and I loved getting into the head of Thomas Piety as he tries to root through his feelings and attempt to solve, put a muzzle on the devils that are swarming inside his head. So the last thing I want to touch on is the magic system found within this story, and one of our main characters, Billy the Boy. Now, Billy the Boy was the character that they adopted from this battle, and they bring him back, and they quickly realize that he is touched by Our Lady, or he has a demon in him. So he is blessed with what the people call the cunning. And there's not much known about this magic system. It's very soft, and people really look down on anybody that possesses this type of demon or magic. But the way it's presented to you was just fantastic. When you get hit with the magic in this story, it is just some of the greatest scenes I have ever read inside of fantasy. I loved this magic system and the cunning and Billy the Boy. Billy the Boy was written so well. He's very stoic, and he's skinny and undernourished, and he speaks in one or two words, and he finishes people's sentences every now and again, and he'll tell you, if this person's going to die today. It is just so creepy and cool and ominous. I thoroughly enjoyed this magic, and like I said, when it is unleashed, man, bring an umbrella, because there are intestines and body parts flying and blood is dripping from the ceiling. It was fantastic. I really thoroughly enjoyed the way the magic was handled in this story. Now, that's all I got. Those are the things that I really loved about this story: the character work, the relationships, the plots. I didn't really touch on them much, but they were just done very well. There were twists and turns that I was shocked about. And like I said, the magic was fantastic. Characters, plot, magic, it was, and dialogue and banter. It was all so well done. Now, I do see some negatives, and I'll give them to you right now. Yes, this is a story that is derivative of a TV show, and if you don't know, it's Peaky Blinders. We see very many similarities to both the War of the Rose Thrones and Peaky Blinders. Some of it mirrors it exactly. Now, it's like I said before, this story stepped out of that shadow and became its own thing. There's another series, the Greenbone Saga, that is very derivative of the Godfather series that we've seen, Mario Puzo's Godfather, and you can line up both of these series exactly to that movie and that that TV series. So I'm not going to give that such a major negative. Another negative I have heard is that Thomas Piety can be very redundant and repeat some of the things that he says a lot. Now listen, like I said before, this is a first-person story told through the eyes of Thomas Piety, and I believe he is retelling his story. Now, I don't know about you, but if you've ever gone to like your grandparents' house and they tell you this long-ass story, and you know, you get up, you leave, you get in the car, you forget something, you go back to your grandfather's house, you're like, hey, I forgot my phone, and then he's like, hey, did I tell you about this time? And like, yeah, bro, you told me about it 15 minutes ago when I was here. So, yeah, I believe he's going to be redundant. He's retelling a story. There are a lot of things you'll hear over and over, like the right man for the right job. But you know what? I love those colloquialisms. You know, we have some more colloquialism that just provide some ambiance and atmosphere to this story. Our Lady, we get some of the religious sayings within this story, and if somebody crosses the river, that means, you know, they die. But I really enjoyed it. I think that if you love the visceral, the violent, the vulgar, this is for you. If you like a story that is packed with action, emotion, and even compassion, this is that story. And I suggest you guys go get it immediately, and hit me up if you guys have read this series and let me know what you guys think about it. So hey, I'm going to cut it here, and I'm going to tell you, like I always tell you, let's keep growing to be better people. Let's keep growing to be better readers, and I will see you guys on that flip side. Peace.